Meeting to order, please. Join me in the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I apologize for being a little late. Do we have any comments from the audience? Seeing none, how about corrections to the agenda or consent calendar?
I would like to change the order of two items. If we could we change 10 and 11 or something?
10 and 11.
All right.
Oh, yes, we can.
I recuse on 10, so that will just leave it. I'm going to go back to person. All right. We can put the legal later.
I'm just like, okay, oh, Tom, okay, I'll move adoption of consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And our motion passes unanimously.
You might as well follow me. I'm going to pass this one off to Trevor to give you a little update of what's going on at Diamond Valley Ranch in response to the emergency action that we have been taking some flood events in August of this year. So some of the things are starting to wrap up on the response front, but we've got some other things on the calendar.
Thank you, Jill. So real quickly, Trevor Posner, engineer. We had a physical rain event on Saturday that didn't have any impact. Recorded about 2 inches of rain over 4 hours, 1.3 quarters of an inch an hour. So pretty good rate of rain and didn't see issues. So the one update we had is I had to look at the name of the meeting. For the FEMA in-person briefing for the event, December 22nd. So it would be for 3 hours with FEMA and Tahoe staff to go over the application, potential reimbursement, and eligible activities in response to this event. We are discussing with Gary about potentially closing the emergency because we are in this kind of holding pattern. We want to review with FEMA and Tahoe if there's a benefit for continuing the emergency with respect to eligible costs and reimbursements. So I think that's the update for right now. So based on the feedback we get from FEMA, and then also after consulting with Gary again, we'll probably evaluate whether we want to continue the emergency our next meeting in January or not. But that's the latest on what's going on out there and our meetings in terms of potential reimbursement. So folks have any questions?
But how does that rain volume align with the 20-year storm event? Because I mean, it's just at that volume amount, the fact that there was no issues, I think seems incredibly positive.
Yeah, I don't have it at my fingertips. I do know that the 2 inches that we received in an hour was around 50-year event in August, but that was obviously a different month, different period, and different event. But for feel, I would expect, I mean, thinking from a stormwater perspective, that's got to be close to a design storm event. And usually you think of an inch an hour is pretty close to what you're aiming for. So I think it's a pretty good event in the 10-year range.
No, I think just to continue continued efforts out there.
Yeah. So I think the next sort of big thing we're going to do about for just next month using our existing budget, but that may be eligible for reimbursement because we're doing it in response to the loss of aggregate from the birds out there. There's no other questions. Request that before we continue the emergency action, should repair the Diamond Valley Ranch facilities for resolution 3230-22.
Yeah, moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you.
Chris?
Good evening.
I'm Chris Sill, I'm an IT manager for South Carolina Public Utility District. The item before you today is requesting an exception to normal bidding procedures because of special circumstances, which would authorize staff to purchase up to $75,000 using available grant funding for vehicle radio equipment and installation services from Walker Telecom, Inc. So since the start of this fiscal year, the district, specifically IT and electricians, have been working with some parties over at the city of South Tahoe and investigating the feasibility of merging the district's radio frequency onto the city of South Tahoe's new state-of-the-art radio network. This opportunity will enhance the district and city of South Tahoe's partnership and provide emergency communications channels between our organizations during local emergency events. This radio network is currently supporting the city's police, fire, and public works radio channels, thus needs to be highly redundant and reliable. So why Walker Telecom? Well, they designed and built the system. So the city did go out and competitively bid this project, and Walker Telecom was the successful bidder and was awarded the contract. Walker Telecom has also extended the same pricing to the district that they gave the city of South Tahoe in their multi-million-dollar contract with Walker Telecom. So Walker's got a very deep understanding of how that system works, and they've also said these are the radios that the city is installing in all their police vehicles and fire vehicles, so it would be smart if the district can install these same radios. So these radios will work with our infrastructure today, but then if we do move forward with this partnership opportunity with the city, they can be reprogrammed to work with that new system in the future. So with that, do you have any questions?
Is there any training that comes along with that, or?
Yeah, so what they do as part of their installation services, they do a full as-built diagram for each vehicle they put these radios in, and then they basically ship us the radios pre-programmed, so they work with our system right out of the box.
Are we using the city's base station, or do we need any kind of?
Currently, we're using our own tower and base station, but if we were to move forward with that partnership, the city actually has 3 new towers scattered across town to give them full coverage, both inside buildings and outside.
And this is just a fraction of the radios that we're planning to replace, correct?
Correct, yeah. So with the installation services, we can purchase about 25% of our fleet of vehicle radios.
And the rest we're going to try to get in next year's capital budget.
Yeah, it's been my experience that instrumentation and controls are oftentimes sole source, or they need to be. It's a specialized thing. In order to make your system, whether it be a wastewater plant or water plant or, like you said, communications, make it work, you need what you need, and you just can't go out on the market and put a spec together and get it. So I support, sole sourcing and instrumentation and control issues when staff are listed.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, it's great you've been working with the city. We're getting bigger bang for our buck, and I think better support the future. I mean, standardized with the city.
Right.
Where is like the existing system we have now is kind of end of life?
It is. It's very cumbersome to help troubleshoot and support. Parts are getting more scarce to manage it, and it is kind of a legacy radio system. The city's new network is very digital. It's sort of, the tower that you're closest to, it keys up only that one tower and then broadcasts it out. So it's a more digital system, more standard with emergency communications today.
Requested action?
Requested action is going to be authorize a purchase exception based on special circumstances to purchase mobile radios from Walker Telecom Inc. and an amount not to exceed $75,000.
Sure.
I'll second that. The motion and the second. And that motion passes now. Thank you very much. Frank?
I'm here today regarding the public trucking sewer pump station project and the awarding of the bid. So we did advertise in mid-October for this project. We held a pre-bid on October 26th. We had 13 general contractors show up to that, which is the biggest turnout I've ever seen. So it's good to see that we're getting a lot of interest. A lot of out-of-town contractors, a lot of names that we don't work with. So we did receive 3 bids. They came in really tight for a project of this size, ranging from roughly $4.1 million to $4.3 million, and that was within budget and actually significantly under our engineer's estimate of $4.9 million. So that was good to see. And then as we got into the bids, it got a little more complicated. We always have irregularities in the bids, minor irregularities such as not putting an address on or, name of the company, things like that on all our bid forms. A lot of minor irregularities that we can waive throughout the bid. And the bid from our lowest bidder, T&S Construction, they actually omitted 3 forms completely, and so that got us a little excited. We initially let them know that we thought we would be recommending finding them responsive, and then they filed a very well-written protest laying out why those forms weren't material to the bid, didn't give them any advantage of the bid, and would not give them any opportunity to withdraw their bid. So those are kind of the main reasons. And then the third one is jeopardizing our funding. These were forms that we have in there related to our grant funding requirements, but we've done, spent a lot of time over the last 2 weeks tracking down that these forms either can be resubmitted with the bid, it can be submitted prior to signing the contract, or were redundant to other requirements that we have within the bid, and by signing the bid itself, they met those same certifications and, promising to follow the rules of our contract. So, legal counsel agreed, and we all came to the agreement that we're comfortable recommending that the board waive these as minor irregularities and award the project to the lowest responsible bidder. So, do you have any questions?
Yeah, but, some of these requirements, to me, it seems like they ought to be, they're going to check the box. It's not really a decision between one contractor and the next. It's something that you need as a compliance before you can award the contract. Is there any way we can move those out of the bidding process and into a,
Yes, that is something we've all talked about doing over the last few days, is that, especially these 3 forms in particular, let's move those to the next phase of the process between board award and contract signing. We have other forms such as like drug-free workplace, and insurance requirements. There's a lot of those forms that come in over the next 15 to 20 days. And so we talked about moving these, and kind of taking an overall look at all of the forms and making sure that everything that we have in there is stuff we need to require at bid done versus being able to get that later, and simplify it, so that we don't have to waive so much stuff.
well, things are confusing when you come to the board with irregularities and then protest letter, and, that seems needless. And if you can reform the process a little bit, I'll give you a thumbs up on that.
Yeah, and it's something we're already underway with our whole funding specifications, and our bid forms with BB&K. We've got a first draft a couple weeks ago of some of the recommendations, and then we'll be going at these grant forms as well, hopefully prior to the next bid.
Yeah, as you guys are aware, we have a new grants coordinator. The form that we've been working under for these sections were developed with Lynn, years ago. And so now that Yesenia is our senior manager and we're working more closely together with her, I think it is the right time for us to revisit those sections in their entirety, and update them, because it's a new generation. So we'll try to get it cleaned up. You know, we might do it sort of in baby steps now that we are confident that these particular forms do not need to be provided with the bid. We can do that very easily for the next two bids, which we have one coming next month that will have all the same requirements. So we'll be able to get it cleaned up for that. And then we'll tackle the rest as we have time.
And we did reach out to state water boards as well and talk to them about some code requirements, and they were very clear that, you know, there's only a couple of forms that they require, which would not be ones, and beyond that, they really don't want to be involved in how we did things and how they want things, as long as we're following state law. And so we did run it by them, and I think we'll continue to work with them as we revise the requirements to make sure that we have all the kind of stuff in there.
It's good news, and I wonder, if it was time of the year, or are we just lucky this time, or has bidding climate changed? Do you have an opinion on why we did so well this time?
We haven't put a low bid contractor here. You got any input on why the prices were coming in well?
Yeah, I think
Maybe you can step up and hear you.
Hi, my name's Anthony Still with DORADO Construction. Yeah, I think the private side work has slowed down both in Greenway and the Valley, which has put pressure on public works contractors to be more competitive. And there's been some easing with some supply chain, and people are more confident looking at bids and getting more competitive. Uncertainty about the future next year, wanting to have work moving forward. So.
Well, maybe my question was kind of not related to the specific thing, but just what you were seeing in the supply chain. And so you're probably dealing with it more day to day. So you have seen it loosening up. Kind of what you're experiencing now.
I think we've been living in the state for enough time now to understand what 12 weeks means or 16 weeks means, what that means in reality, and we're able to compensate for that. In terms of pre-planning before, at the time you get the contract, you're cutting letters of intent and working closely with suppliers, not waiting to typical times pre-pandemic.
Yeah, I think that's something that we were shooting for with the timing of this bid, was knowing that we can't really get into heavy construction on this project until the Tahoe sewer pump station is finished next fall. We wanted to bid it now to give them time to do materials, and hoping that they would see that security of, you know, this job is 2 years from now to completion, that they've got that work secured now with pending economy. So we're excited to see that competitive bid.
And one other thing that wasn't mentioned that I'm sure gave them a competitive edge is that TNS is actually the contractor on the Tahoe pump station. So they have experience working on this type of project for us. They're already here, and we'll be able to, you know, roll from one project to the next.
Yeah, these two projects have the same design team from Corolla, very similar electrical needs, very similar coordination needs of working in an existing sewer pump station that age. So we're excited to have them and excited to have that continuity between projects too.
So can we anticipate getting more contract approval type items further in advance than probably historically done, just to kind of accommodate for these realities?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really where we've been going as a department, is trying to get to a reality. You guys awarded the Blackwell water line, I think 2 months ago, for next summer's water line exploration, with the same idea in mind of getting bidders, being competitive with securing work in the future, as well as being able to get the materials and not deal with the lead times.
Yeah, we've gone from advertising in like January to advertising in November to advertising in like August, September for a water line project. You know, not our most complex work, but we're giving them a lot of advance time to get all the pieces and parts together, recognizing that it's to us to get our hands on stuff.
No, I think it's great.
I would say thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate you providing and bringing forward some of the past experience with this contractor. And as I guess I'm appreciating or understanding is that they're doing a fun job with the Tahoe project.
Yeah, I've been very happy. You guys have worked with us years ago, correct? This was, the Tahoe Keys was the first project in a long time that they had actually did. So we were glad to see them back, and everybody's had really great things to say about the work that they're doing.
I guess my only concern is timing. If we're looking to implement this in November and grading season, is there a lot of grading anticipated or anything like that? Or
Very little, most of the work is inside, so there is some site work, that they'll either do this summer or the following summer. It's mainly paving and BMPs around the station, very little underground work outside. Most of the work is basically taking existing pumps and electrical equipment out of the inside of the building and putting new in the inside of the building. So, they will be able to do work over the winter, and, you know, depending on their lead times and how things play out. Some work during the winter, some work during good weather, but, yeah, we'll be working with them closely and getting that schedule figured out once they know when they're gonna have materials, so.
this pump station is kind of right adjacent to the Truckee River. Is there any anticipated revetment work or any kind of stem stabilization or slope stabilization anticipated as part of this project or scope with this project?
We don't have anything really scoped on the river bank. The new owners of that property, Tahoe RCD, are working on their plans for the river, and so we didn't want to get into kind of that area. We had done work, I want to say in the 80s, was when that slope stabilization was done.
I'm sorry, what?
After the 97
storm?
So after the 97 storm, that bank was stabilized, got articulated block all along that bank, and so we're not touching that articulated block. We are on that side and around that area putting rock and rock slope stabilization, which will help minimize runoff that's already going that way, slow that down a little bit. We're creating a snow storage area where we have existing asphalt, and so instead of piling that snow on the asphalt, we'll be piling it on snow rails during off so that can infiltrate instead of runoff. So,
and we are participating in PRCD's Jump and Meadow project. So, you know, we'll be collaborating with them on any stabilization as part of that effort, not this year.
Yeah, just want to encourage any opportunity to improve our ability to adapt to any kind of, you know, climate change or whatever, and things like that. I don't want to lose the same version of the, you know, $4.1 million into upgrading it. We might make sure we take care of it.
Well, and with that RCD project, I do expect that there will be some gravity main rehabilitation happening, and at a very minimum, out in the meadow area, we'll be working on the actual manholes, making sure that they're watertight and raised to the right elevation. So that's the work that we're doing, but it is also our opportunity to get in there in coordination with their construction to do any like interior piping rehab all the way up to the station. So,
we have the access to the site.
right, exactly.
That's what the challenge up there.
Okay, anything else? Go ahead.
All right, we have an accident. We have the board find minor irregularities in the bid from T&S Construction Company Incorporated to be immaterial and weighted immaterial irregularities, and award project to the lowest responsible bidder, T&S Construction Company Incorporated, in the amount of $4,135,000.
So,
I'll second that. Second, a motion and a second. And that motion passes unanimously. Okay, all right. In accordance with Board Policy 2050-1, it is time for the board to elect the board president for the 2023 calendar year. floor is open for nominations, unless you want to have a discussion first. Anybody have any discussion?
Kind of get your feelings probably.
First of all, I want to say thank you for the privilege of being president and also vice president, being on the executive committee. And as such, I would like to pass the gavel. And so I would like to nominate Dave Peterson for president.
Now I guess that's the day.
Yeah, it's been my experience that, it works good to kind of rotate through the officers and just vice president for 2 years, and so it makes sense to serve 2 years on this, and then I wouldn't want to continue that. It should be time for the next vice president to step up at that point. So yeah, I'll accept.
Okay, so we'll take that as a motion. We need a second.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Oh, wait, let me start the vote over. Still hanging on to the last vote. Okay. Okay, now let's look for that. Okay, and that motion passes unanimously.
And then this becomes effective in January.
It becomes effective with the January 5th board meeting. And then, we will, next nominate a vice president for the 2023 calendar year. And then come January 5th, we will, Dave will appoint the, committee for the 2023 calendar year.
So that's my name, Shannon, for vice president.
Thank you. All right, so accepted. The board was.
Okay. Saying that, I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Start the vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Okay.
Congratulations.
All right, that brings us to standing and ad hoc committees and liaison reports. Anybody?
I've been absent, so nothing for me.
You said your flip-flops on from home. Just been an off committee on Monday, and we basically went through all the items that were presented today, and then went through the reactive work order list, and it's looking like numbers are down, and compared to last November at this, or last year at the same time of year, they're down from there as well. So it looks like things are holding up, as well as good job, I'd say, on getting all the snow taken care of and some of the challenges of this last storm. I appreciate you guys doing all the hard work of keeping us up and running. I think we lost power for a little bit there. And, anyways, did you notice it? I don't know if Julie, am I missing anything? We talked a little bit about Tahoe.
We talked about the Keller
Phase 3 and the Keller tank. There's challenges there.
Water quality.
There's some water quality challenges. So we're trying to work through those and find a solution to flushing temporary or
Yeah, still continuing to struggle with water quality, particularly in the Red Lake Road area where it's been pervasive, persistent, I should say. And then Glenwood Well. As we turn on Glenwood Well, we get this shot of iron, high iron concentrations in the water. But they're finding that if they run it continuously at low speed, that is alleviated. So, old system, a lot of steel, and so just, trying to manage, that situation as it continues to progress.
Yeah, and again, I think, I talked about this so I can talk quite a bit about phase 3 of the coalition.
And just on a small little thing, a shout out to the public that now's the time to choose a way to run that is now covering all of the fire hydrants in town. So hopefully people will get after it.
My neighborhood, actually, Mary Alexander, who works here, her husband Jay, and their neighbor, and they just their son, who I think is 7, and they did a lot of fire hydrants. They adopted a lot. They did more than one, and it was really cool.
Now it comes up, you do that.
Yeah, it was really Do I have nothing.
No commission for I am not on committee yet.
You will? So relaxed, right? Okay, board member reports.
Just want to, congratulate Nate again and welcome to the board, and then Dave, James, look forward to seeing where we're going. I'll be out actually the 27th to the 7th of December to January, working on the calendar. And then just to say, my daughter actually recently did the tour with Shelley, and she spoke very highly of it. To give a quick story, she was supposed to do the tour the day after the election. She didn't ask me anything about the election the whole time it was going on. That day she wakes up and she looks at me, she says, "Dad, did you win?" I said, "Yeah, I won." She's like, "Good, because that would have been awkward if you didn't." So yeah, that was good, but no, she really had a good time. Just a great job, Shelley. And that's what
I'd like to echo the congratulations, welcome, and I look forward to.
Likewise, just welcome Nick, and looking forward to working with you.
Steve? Yeah, just to say thank you for the welcoming words. I appreciate it. I look forward to working with you all and working for the district and the ratepayers. So, ready to get to work.
Okay, El Dorado Water Agency, Purveyor report.
We didn't cancel the so I don't know where we're going. Looking at it.
And then, so we're gonna step out for the Julie's presentation, or?
That's a limitation on this item.
Please do.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Adrian, Senior Engineer with the district, and this is that last Julie who you all know, district engineer. Are we able to?
Can you see it? There we go.
All right, so we are giving a presentation on the Tahoe Keys water system analysis. A little bit of background before we get started. I think most people in the room know what's going on over there, but the Tahoe Keys water system has some issues with water quality, and was it last year that they?
21.
21? Yeah, so this year, because last year there was water restriction. Basically, the Keys was looking for water. They were trying to figure out how to keep water in the pipes, and they came to us looking to purchase water, or for us to take their system over. And so that's what sparked our internal hydraulic analysis, which we then hired a consulting firm to do an independent analysis of what it would take to give the Tahoe Keys water system water from our district. They approached us about becoming a wholesale water supplier. The next slide here basically has the task that we laid out. So the first was, can we provide water to Tahoe Keys? The two scenarios they were asking for was 700 gallons per minute off-peak, so 12 hours per day. And the second option they were looking at was 1,800 gallons per minute continuous. The second task was associated with us potentially taking them over And what we try to limit the scope on this task to basically what supply sources would we use to supply the Tahoe Keys, and based on those supply sources, how much water would we need to provide through our interconnection that's already in place, and what improvements to our system would we need to be able to supply that amount of water through the existing interconnection. The third task is a full-blown analysis of what it would take to take over the Tahoe Keys water system and incorporate it into the district system. So in this first effort, we hired Corollo engineers for the first two tasks. They were already familiar with our hydraulic model. It made the most sense. And then we didn't have the, costly task 3 before finding out what the results of task 1 and task 2 were. So this is a presentation on the Corollo analysis for task 1 and task 2. I'll go through the various scenarios we looked at for task 2 a little later on here in the presentation. So this is just a vicinity map to give you an idea of where the Tahoe Keys water system is compared to our system. It's a little hard to see here, but this orange area is the Tahoe Keys water system. The pink area is the Lucas Water Company service area, and the rest of it that has these pipes and nodes, that's the district's water system. This location right here on Tahoe Keys Boulevard, if you can see my cursor, is where our existing interconnection is. Just close to Tahoe Keys Boulevard. So before looking at what it would take to provide the Tahoe Keys system water, we have to start with a baseline analysis of our own water system. And we have 4 components here. Really the first was looking at demands, not only for our system, but the Tahoe Keys system as well. The second was looking at the available water supplies for both systems. The third is a mass balance supply demand analysis of just the district system, and we split our system into 2 different areas just based on the geography and hydraulics of where the wells are in our system, and basically being able to get water to certain areas from those well sources. So we're kind of distinct in that our state line area is where most of the production is, and that is the area that the Tahoe Keys interconnection is, whereas the Myers system has a couple of wells there, but it is not easy for us to get water from Myers to the state line area. So that's really just looking, do we have enough supply to meet demand? The fourth part of this was a hydraulic analysis of the district system, particularly the state line areas, to just look at, do we have the capacity in our distribution system to get water to that Tahoe Keys interconnection point in the amount that they want, and maintain pressure and fire flow in our system at the same time. So this slide here is on the demand analysis. After looking at what the Tahoe Keys provided to us and what we have for historical demands of our own system, we decided that it would be in the best interest to do a new demand analysis based on current data. And there's basically a formula for determining these demands out of the California Code of Regulations, and it's all based on historical usage over the past 10 years. And I'm going to quickly go through these various, demand scenarios, just so that you know what they all are. Average, ADD is average day demand. That is the average demand over the course of an entire year. Max day demand is typically your highest day of usage within the last 10 years. Peak hour demand is the peak hour demand usage during that day of maximum day demand. You look at the 4 hours of the highest demand on a max day, which is, typically a July 4th kind of day. Fire flow is based on, the structures that are in the service area, and we always design water systems to be able to meet maximum day demand plus fire flow. So just looking at this table, you can kind of see that the Tahoe Keys water system, if you look at max day demand, it is a significant demand compared to our existing district demands. There's 1,500 connections there. Our water system has
Over 14,000?
over 14,000, but demand-wise, this 2,483 is about 30% demand increase on our system.
Where you see my long comment at one point in the presentation.
So our next couple slides here are regarding existing water supply sources. The first one here is for the Tahoe water system. They have 3 wells. Well 1 is not currently, it doesn't have any treatment on it currently. Well 2 has treatment for PTE and uranium. Well 3 has uranium treatment. They did build a purchased water connection with Lucas, which pretty much guarantees them 500 gallons per minute. They have a mutual aid interconnection with us, which is basically either agency is out of water, we try to help each other out, very common in the water industry, but we don't guarantee that we can provide water to them.
Can I ask this one question on the slide? Just for that well one, so what do we know about their water quality testing? Is there any indication that we might be exceeding standards or anything anytime soon, or is there anything that we don't know about or we should know about?
I don't, they're not exceeding MCLs currently, but I do believe that they are getting close on some of them. Part of the phase 3 condition assessment of their system will dig into all of that, kind of like trending of water quality, what it looks like. Would we need to put wellhead treatment on that in like a year from now, 2 years from now? That's part of this whole analysis of their system.
And based on the location of well number 1, it is in the vicinity of that known PCE clone at the Y. So,
Yeah, PC has been creeping up.
at that
Getting
location.
close to the MCL.
Okay, this is a table showing the district water supply sources. We show whether it's in the state line area or the Myers area, and just a couple wells I'm going to point out on here. First one being the airport well, the standby well. Currently, it's impacted by arsenic above the MCL. We're able to operate this well 14 days a year, but we would only use it under an emergency. The college well is the same status. We can use it 14 days a year. It's on standby, and that one's impacted by uranium. Another well on here that is currently not in service is the Paloma well. We're doing a rehab on it. We're not exactly sure what the capacity is going to be after the rehab's done, but our conservative estimate is 1,200 gallons per minute. Another just concept that's actually on my next slide here is firm capacity. When we look at planning for a water system, we look at being able to serve the system with the largest source out of service. In our system, that would be the Baby well. It's a huge well, 3,600 gallons per minute. If that well were offline, we'd be, some of us would be having heartburn here just trying to make sure we got water in the pipes. You guys are familiar with Paloma. That's been off for a couple of years. That's the reason why we plan water systems to meet demand with firm capacity. So here's the results of the mass balance supply demand analysis. For the state line zone, with all of our wells in service, we've got 9,790 gallons per minute, but with the Bayview well out of service, only 6,190. So in that area, we have a deficit of 1,040 gallons per minute. In the Myers area, we have a little bit of excess capacity at 811 gallons per minute. This is the results of the baseline hydraulic analysis. I apologize, this is very difficult to see as well. There's some yellow nodes that are on this map and orange nodes that are indications of lower pressure areas. The main area of concern is over by our H Street tank and Julian F Street. Basically, in our state line zone, that is an area that is subject to low pressure. And just to give you an idea of why that might be, is our state line tanks that feed the zone via gravity are all the way at the state line, kind of under the gondola and Vancicle Bi-State Park. And Julian S Street is all the way across here. So there's friction losses in the pipes during periods of high demand, which cause not pressure waves, but fluctuations in pressure over in that area. And we know in that Y area of our state line zone, we can see pressure swings of up to 40, 50 psi. So looking at our baseline system, we have a couple of improvements that are needed, and they're related to supply, that 1,040 gallon per minute deficit, and we have 2 identified projects to mitigate that deficiency. One of them is adding arsenic treatment to the airport well. That'll give us 500 gallons per minute and a very critical part of our system that is right near that area that I was saying was low pressure. If we have that well online, that's going to really help out in that location. And the other project is the Sunset Well. There was a study done a few years back that recognized that we could re-drill this well and gain additional capacity. So that is our other plan for mitigating that deficiency, and we've already upsized pipes in that area, anticipating this potential project. In terms of storage, there is no existing storage deficiencies in the system. A peak cleaning storage tank could help hydraulics in that west part of the state line zone. Basically, fill a tank during the middle of the night when people aren't using water, and then use a booster pump to pump that up during periods of high demand, and that'll help with that pressure fluctuation. And in the distribution system, there are no improvements identified currently. Estimated capital improvement cost of those first 2 projects was $3 million, probably a little bit more today.
Just real quick before you switch slides, I was looking to see how, either through a separate mechanism, but if we're going to be investing large sums, regardless, in the inclusion of that tank, and how we could look to factor that in.
Of the peaking tank I was talking about? Yeah.
And you get into more detail given kind of during the last presentation. But kind of why you're going through this exercise, having that included, I think, would be significant and terribly helpful for the issues we face.
The sneak peek with the presentation I'll give you guys in a couple of months on where we're at with the capital improvement program. I'm intending on including both the arsenic treatment at Airport Well and that peaking tank in the 10-year plan on the very far end. Now that we know that those are 2, clear deficiencies on our system as we sit here today. And then another thing just to note, as we get into talking about funding opportunities, if we were to take on the keys, there is an opportunity for the district to apply to the state for some incentive funding because we took on a distressed system that could, help us fund these projects.
Ryan, I mean, as much as we can throw in that basket at that point, if it becomes a reality.
I have a quick question. I'm wondering why Dave had to recuse himself from this presentation. I mean, we're not making any decisions on it. It seems like it's just informational. Not that it's...
I like having them up with space.
David, he's in the Keys, and so he has a financial interest. So anything dealing with the district's negotiations and discussions, whether it's on a technical level or negotiation level, he has a conflict of interest and has to recuse himself. Does that make sense?
Sort of. I mean, it's just this informational presentation.
It's true, but it's background on which other decisions will be made.
Okay, so our, basically the wholesale recommendations, task 1 here, Well, the first one, they're asking for 700 gallons per minute. Because we already have a deficiency in that zone, any additional water we're gonna be providing to the Tahoe Keys water system, they would need to provide that supply. So we'd be looking for an additional 350 gallons per minute of supply to be able to provide that option. We didn't identify any storage or distribution system improvements required along with that wholesale option. The estimated cost is $4 million, which is basically the cost of the new well. Wholesale option number 2, 1,800 gallons per minute continuous, was a much taller order. Similar to option 1, they would need to be able to provide us with 1,800 gallons a minute to be able to supply them due to our existing deficiency. There's no storage improvements recommended, but there was a lot of distribution system improvements recommended that honestly are not easy distribution system improvements. There's 5,700 feet that were identified of new/replacement water main ranging from 12 to 16 inch, and it's really moving water from the Tahoe neighborhood to the Tahoe Keys interconnection point. And on this map, the red lines indicate the areas that would need to be replaced or new pipe added. So this one up here is, in the upper right corner, is a pipeline that goes beneath the meadow behind Meeks. And a lot of this, rest of this is on Highway 50, including crossing of the Truckee River. So very difficult project.
And one thing to note, a lot of this red pipe is, in the scheme of things, when you look at our distribution system as a whole, it's relatively new pipe. So the idea of having to go in the, replace pipe that we just installed in the 1990s in order to provide additional flow to the Tahoe Keys intertie, it's not that easy to swallow, for us. It's not something we would necessarily be doing, just because you're taking a good pipe out of service in order to make that happen.
Yeah, and maybe to point out also, none of these pipeline improvement projects are on our 10-year plan or anywhere on our radar. Going back to this site, estimated cost for providing this wholesale option 2 is $13.2 million, a lot of that being the pipeline cost. Okay, so task number 2 is where we looked at how much water we would need to put through the district intertie based on various combinations of supply sources. So scenario 1 here, we wouldn't be using any of the Tahoe Keys wells or the Lukens intertie. Scenario 2, we're not using any Tahoe Keys wells, but we are using the purchased water connection with Lukens. Scenario 3, we're using all of the Tahoe Keys wells, but not the water from Lukens. Scenario 4, we are not using any of the wells in Tahoe Keys that require uranium treatment, and we are not using the Lukens intertie. Scenario 5, we're using all of the Tahoe Keys wells plus the Lukens intertie. So just kind of before we look at any of the rest of this, scenario 1 is going to require the most improvements on our side of the connection to be able to provide. Scenario 5 is going to be the least amount that we'll need to be able to supply them. This slide summarizes the needs for each scenario. And so just quickly going through this. Scenario 1, the largest one, is going to require 12,000 feet of new or replacement pipeline plus an additional 2,483 GBPM of supply. The scenario that's the least is number 5, which is still going to require 2,300 feet of replacement and an additional 223 gallons per minute of supply. Scenario 1, 26.6 million, ranging down to 6.3 million for scenario 5. So significant costs associated with these this potential. This map here again shows for scenario 1 where we're supplying all of the water through our intertie. This shows all of the pipeline that would be needed. Really all the way down Highway 50 from Tahoe and all the way up Tahoe Keys Boulevard. Based on where actual supply sources go and potential for storage tanks and booster stations, these pipeline improvements will change. This slide here just summarizes estimated, capital improvement costs for all of the options that we looked at on this. Gone through. Any questions from the group? Or comments?
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I think it goes into a couple different things as I was thinking about it, you know, and again, great presentation. I think, you know, the way you're able to distill the information down and make it understandable to everybody, I think is great. I mean, I think at some level it goes to some previous conversation we had about cost sharing for the next phases. And then also, you know, kind of just reiterating the point that, you know, I think your slides spoke for themselves in terms of kind of the misuse of water in the Keys is atrocious. I think having turf and infill in soil that in an area that's not natural or native, it's just ridiculous. It's a waste. It's harmful to the environment. It's harmful to our lake. In my opinion, disrespectful to the efforts our community has made through FTPUD efforts that I myself have taken advantage of through certified vet programs when I bought my house. And so that turf piece is significant to me. We're spending a lot of money to allow people to have non-required water usage and grossly out of kind of step with what the rest of the community adheres to. And that is, again, I will reiterate that every time we have this conversation, will be very, very significant. And I would be curious if Shelley could give a quick update. I know there were some efforts to engage in kind of sustainability planning in the Keys. But I would note with that, planning is great. I am a planner, but I also know when plans don't mean anything and they sit on the shelf. And so it needs to be way more concrete as far as demonstrable and documented reductions in turf and the water utilized or such. Before I think we could start to entertain this as an idea.
Can you go back to your scenario slide just one previously? This one. I guess my question was more of, I guess from our perspective, which one seems most reasonable and appropriate for the long term? Like, who we're ultimately going to take it over? Do you guys have a sense from the staff level in terms of which one you would go with?
So I would say that is going to be part of the phase 3 consultant analysis to determine how we would actually operate the Tahoe Keys water system and what type of sources make sense, whether that's additional groundwater wells, different groundwater wells than what's currently there, like maybe out of the area of contamination, would a surface water treatment plant make sense? I could tell you without any kind of analysis that, you know, building a tank and a booster station to serve the Keys is needed. That will greatly decrease what's needed on actual source capacity because you can store water. So if you're in the case of a fire on a max day, you don't need 5,000 gallons per minute of supply sources in your tank. So I think once we go through all of that, determine really what makes the most sense in terms of not only supply but storage and boosting capacity, we'll be able to better determine which of these scenarios make sense, if it's one of these. I mean, if we end up going to surface water, that's different than any of these scenarios that we've got here. But one of the issues with like having PCE and uranium is the wellhead treatment is complex, especially when you have both of those together, and there's some byproducts that might not be desirable. So as we go through that phase 3 analysis with the consultant, we will have a lot of input into that, into kind of what that operation would actually look like, and then what these costs would actually be.
It just seems like some of the scenarios related to dealing with the existing wells at the Keys are just non-starters. I mean, I think you presented them as all being viable solutions and the things that they're to get there, but it seems like for the long term, it's probably not a scenario that probably
I agree with that.
You don't want to buy a lemon.
Yeah, and that is really why we're doing the phase 3. We don't want to buy a lemon. We want to identify all of the issues with the Tahoe Keys water system up front, so we know what it's going to cost to fix those, and make sure that like those costs are allocated correctly.
I have a quick question just about, and this may have been discussed on you,
What about the income side of it? Like how many, ratepayers you're picking up? Like what kind of stream of revenue are we thinking just from a financing standpoint, other things? Because I get the capital side, it's great information. Just trying to balance that with kind of, a better financial decision long term and what other.
So, we've been focusing today on kind of the technical track, there's kind of a parallel administrative track between the financing and kind of the acquisition requirements and all of that, and look over here.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it needs all balance. I mean, for a decision for me to make on capital stuff, I would need to see the payback mechanism.
So the first thing I understand is that the improvements associated with us supplying water need to not impact our existing customer base. And so, that's what, that Adrian actually mentioned that, the keys for the bill for this entire, analysis, including our staff time and our legal time, so far. So, all that has been, on their dime, and, that's why there's such important partner in this whole effort. We collaborated on the selection of the consultant. We involved their team through the steps of the analysis. And actually, you guys are the third group that we've given this presentation to. First, it was the 3x3 committee of our board and their board. Second, it was we presented to their full board, and now we're here giving you the same presentation.
Just a couple of thoughts. The approach has been that, as Julie said, that the cost to bring them in our system and make the necessary improvements to supply water would not be borne by the district's customers. And so there would be, as part of the acquisition, there would likely be set up a benefit assessment district that would drive the funds to do the improvements, and then probably be a 30-year obligation for the Tahoe Keys customers to pay that off without any impact financially to the district's ratepayers. I think the difficult thing is what we're going through right now is not only these improvements, then understanding what is the condition of their current system. I think the district can say, if there's some things needs to be done to bring it up, generally it's the same quality as the district system, can require that to be paid by, but I don't think it would be fair to require them, let's say, if we find out the pipes are matched, or maybe they're a little bit worse than district, but they could provide some improvements to the point, but then above, you wouldn't ask them to put in an entirely new system, as long as it's reasonably compatible and equal to the district system. So, but again, the direction, we've received is, if the Keys wants to do that, they need to pay the cost to do this, because even if the district doesn't acquire their system, they're going to have to pay and deal with this. And one of the things I think that also is helping motivating them looking to the district is, one, they're running the system, they don't really get any benefit of it, and then headaches to running the system. And the district has much better sources financially to do the improvements at a much lower cost than they could acquire privately. They had to go out for the loans because of the state revolving fund and other grants and so forth. So the district has a lot to offer that way, but we've outlined some of these concepts with the Keys it was I forget, a month or two ago when we had that one. I was involved, and so was their attorney in the 3x3 meeting, and so he and I had talked and laid out the presentation how we think this would move forward. So I think we've made it perfectly clear what's the district's approach to this and willingness to help, but not at the expense of the ratepayers.
Yeah, and, as we sit here today, the Keys look seem to be, on board with this concept. They had, hired their own consultant last summer, far west out of Reno, to do what they call the non-financial, evaluation of the different options that they had, including continuing to run their own water company, going, with one of several different private options, and then, talking to us. And that evaluation resulted in them approaching us and saying, you're our first choice. And so, what do we need to do to work together to see how that could happen? It was a non-financial evaluation. So, once they start to see some of these numbers, which this is only a portion of the picture, we'll, kind of continue to gauge their enthusiasm for it.
I appreciate that. I mean, I get it. The technical part is the first step. I'm also interested in the financial aspect of, how did it benefit, assessment district, is some other structure that has to come along eventually anyway in the decision making. It sounds like that's going on parallel to the technical work. So just curious about that stuff.
Yes, I mean, the concern is we want to make sure we have a good arms around what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Because example, you could also set up just a separate zone and assess and have a separate rate structure for them. The problem is it's a relatively small number, 1,500 customers. If you go through your rate hearings and your Prop 218 vote, you could get a protest passed, and then you're stuck with a system that you can't afford to do because they wouldn't have approved the cost increase rates to pay for that.
I guess those considerations should probably be brought forward at some point along with some of this information. Yeah, that's great.
And so we had talked a little bit about that during that last 3x3 meeting, but it hasn't gone to a much higher level at this point yet.
Thanks.
So, we're not through the presentation yet. We've talked about what we have done so far, and now we're going to talk a little bit about what the next task includes. The analysis that was done in task 1 and 2 was actually a pretty small-scale, streamlined, high-level evaluation. Task 3 is going to get us kind of like down into the weeds. So we've got 4 focus areas for this next phase. We need to do a condition assessment of their distribution system. So pipes, fire hydrants, service lines, things like that. We need to do a condition assessment of their sources. That will help us determine which of those 5 scenarios that we evaluated is the most viable and likely for the future. Then we wanted to take a step back and look at the district's own level of service criteria. We have a multi-page document that we developed back in 2012 to 2016 timeframe that lays out basically all the criteria by which the district is committed to designing, maintaining, and operating their system, including things like water quality standards. I think everybody's aware of our history with MTBE. The district actually maintains a higher water quality standard, more stringent water quality standard than the rest of the state. Does the Keys water system meet that? We want to know where they stand with some of these things so that we know if we were to bring them on, what would be the additional costs associated with bringing those parts of their system up to our current standard. Now, that's not to say that our entire system is currently meeting our own standard. That's why we have a capital program. We're continually working on trying to bring our own system up to that level of service that we want to maintain for our customers' benefit. So that's going to be the tricky part of this, as Gary mentioned. We're not asking that the Keys upgrade their system to something brand new. We're trying to assess what it's going to cost to bring them into alignment with the condition of system that we currently provide to our system, or to our customers, so that we can then kind of like bring them into our fold with our capital planning process. And then if we, as a result of the condition assessment, determine that we are going to need additional sources beyond what has already been defined, we're going to look at what are the alternatives for providing that additional supply. So some of them have already been looked at in phases 1 and 2, but as Adrian mentioned, there may be an opportunity here for shifting our attention to surface water and creating a more robust system for the benefit of all of our customers based on this additional needed supply for support of the Tahoe Keys, in addition to kind of their location relative to the lake. And so we definitely plan on working through what would that scenario look like as part of this.
Do we have available surface water, right?
We've had a team. Gary has been very involved in that over the last couple of years, trying to secure the district's water rights.
Yeah, we had several pending applications before the state board regarding surface water rights, some from Truckee River, some from a couple creeks, and some directly from the lake. We have dropped several of them because, example, ones on the Truckee, it would not be available to the district on a year-round basis because it flows. So we have moved everything to the lake. We worked with both other PUDs on the lake in developing the study in what would be our maximum demand at build-out. And so we have that study behind us. We have filed an amended application with the state board that is currently pending right now. It's like painfully slow, but that is slowly grinding through its process. And so we have a significant amount of water that the district could utilize for meeting Keys needs and district needs. And we anticipate that, it's still going to take years before we can get the application approved and move forward, but those are in process right now.
So, a surface water option may not be the least expensive option, but it would be the most robust option for the district as a whole. So we think it's worth including in the suite of alternatives that we're looking at here to, so that we don't just go down the cheapest path that benefits the Keys just because it's the cheapest, but, looking at the benefits to all of our customers.
And one of the thoughts, regardless of whether you do the Keys or not, at some point we get a permit for surface water. At some point we have to start putting it to use. And so,
use it or lose it?
What's that?
Use it or lose it?
Potentially. And so you don't have to put it to use all at one time, but you have to have a plan to start putting it to use. And so this would be an opportunity to put some of that water to use and get it like intake at the Keys, where we currently, obviously don't have any property rights there right now, but the Keys does. And so part of it may really require they agree to allow us lease or an easement to put a surface water treatment plant and access to a lake. So there are some benefits in that way to the district.
This is the most exciting option to me. So many different.
Yeah. Well, to talk a little bit about the opportunity that, the Keys approaching is given to the district. This is something we've been talking about for years, but it hasn't floated to the top of priority. And so now, the Keys approaching us has really given us that sort of push that we needed to dig into it more.
Out of respect of Dwayne Wallace, I would say I'd love to get a strong lake, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that's kind of the four main things we're trying to accomplish in this next task of work. just to get very slightly deeper into what that means. So for the condition assessment on the distribution system, we've got 4 main things that we're trying to look at. Those are listed here. We're not trying to do a research project. We're not trying to understand every inch of every pipe within the system. We're just trying to learn enough about their system to be able to compare it to the condition of our own. On the facility, the facilities for supply, we will go a little bit deeper. You know, there's a lot of components within those wells that have a limited lifespan. You know, we kind of have an idea that their stuff is aging, and so as is our own, right? But I think theirs is actually on the water side. Their systems are older than ours because of the MTV situation that we had in the 90s. We actually have a lot of our wells are in fairly new shape. So how do these wells compare to our own in terms of condition, and then also, you know, what upgrades would be needed just to keep them viable, and what would sort of the ongoing maintenance costs look like for all those treatment systems. And then when you get into the level of service, all of those 10 items here that we included in the list that we provided to the consultants that proposed on this work, that we think are the most important for us to look into and get a handle on. So, you know, just to give you an example, when we're talking about number 5, system monitoring, that would include things like residential water meters. They do not have that. We do. And so, you know, that is going to have to be a cost that they would incur in order to come onto our system. You know, fire supply, we've been working hard to get fire hydrants installed on 500-foot spacing in developed areas. Are they meeting that same standard? If, you know, maybe they need to go in and install some more fire hydrants to come up to the level of service that we are providing. So we'll go through these 10 criteria with our next consultant and try and paint that picture. And then finally, developing the alternatives for consideration. And so we're talking about viability of the existing sources. Can any of those those wells continue to be used based on their condition, based on their water quality, and any upcoming changes in water quality regulations. And then we talk a little bit about the future sources, groundwater versus surface water. And, you know, the district has the responsibility for the groundwater basin as a whole. And so how does the addition of future sources kind of fit into that overall scheme of our groundwater management plan? And then kind of lastly, we've got this question of other types of facilities that may be included, like a water tank within their system. They do not have one currently. And so, you know, we could trade off some of those miles of additional upsized pipe potentially by adding a tank just on their side of that interconnection to provide supply. So that's kind of the full range of types of alternatives that we will be working with this consultant to develop. So here is the plan for moving forward. So TAC 1 and 2, Adrian mentioned, was performed by Corolla. Corolla was selected from we did a very narrow RFP about a year ago. We sent it to 3 specific consultants that all had familiarity with the district system. And we had selected Corolla for phases 1 and 2, TAC 1 and 2 from that RFP process. When we got to phase 3, TAC 3, we decided it was time to take a step back because Tahoe really is very different in nature from that, as far as the kind of work, from Tahoe 1 and 2. So, we went back to our top 2 candidates from the original 3 and said, I want you to put together another proposal, but we do want you to put together your team, come in and talk to us. And so we held interviews with Corolla and Kennedy James on November 29th. After some pretty lengthy deliberation and soul searching, we decided that we're actually going to shift to the Kennedy James team. They put together a very impressive team, and it was very similar to the one that they had presented a year ago, that is why we kept them on the radar for this next phase of work. One of the members of their team was actually the water system operations manager for El Dorado Irrigation District for like 30 years. And so he knows water systems on the ground, not just on the computer. So we figured that would be a very valuable resource as we're getting into the evaluation. Their team leader will be Sachi Ibaraki, who we all know very well from her work with EVO. And she's going to be acting as our interim groundwater management lead with EVO's retirement tomorrow. And so we've already got good working relationship with this particular team. So from here, we're going to start working with the Kennedy James team to develop a scope of work that we can bring to you. We're planning on dividing this next piece into 2. And so right now we're going to have them develop a cost estimate for us just to develop a work plan for task 3. Because we don't want it to turn into a research project. We really want to understand kind of the extent of the effort, that we're all comfortable with it before we move it forward. There's a lot of existing documentation available that they can utilize and hopefully minimize the amount of field work and invasive studies that we need to get a handle on the condition of the key system. So we're targeting January 11th. There's an extra line on this slide.
When is for our agenda item due date?
Oh, thank you. Okay, so January 11th, we would be taking that proposal first to the Tahoe Keys Board for approval. And then if that is approved, then we would bring it to you all on January 19th for approval. And then we would get started.
So in the past, they had referenced their desire to have a cost sharing agreement for this phase 3, and so you know what that's like.
So right now, we have a concept that we want to float past them that would avoid the district actually making any direct monetary contribution to the consultant effort on this, but we want to see their comfort level. As part of the task 3, I think it's very likely that the work plan is going to recommend that we develop a hydraulic model of their water system that is integral to our water system, so we can look at the whole picture together. And we can do that with our own staff. And so it could be an in-kind contribution that we actually develop the water model, run the scenarios, and spend that staff time without asking for reimbursement on it, and then they take for the consultant effort. So, about that approach?
I feel much more comfortable with that approach. And I think Gary highlighted this last time we spoke about this item regarding, the keys potentially in the future wanting to see additional cost sharing. And I'm reluctant to start a partnership in a manner I don't want to continue that partnership. The in-kind, I think that's a different ballgame, makes sense to me. But you see where I'm going with that. I guess the counter to that would be there is some, more than some, there's definitely interest to what could happen in terms of surface water. So does that outweigh that consideration? But generally I would want to kind of, like I said before, begin the relationship how I want to keep it moving throughout. So I would not want to be engaging in any cost sharing because I think it, to your point, Gary, sends the wrong message.
I think, John, we were talking about this earlier, you had a good idea about maybe getting some funding for that work.
Yeah, we've been talking to the DORADO water agency, last couple months, they've indicated openness to perhaps help fund phase 3 effort. So, that would be a cost sharing agreement with the water agency. It's typically a 50-50 type of arrangement, so I can envision the water agency providing some funds, and like we could help match those funds with our own staff time. So a number of years ago, we were able to negotiate the ability for us to use our own staff time as match for those funds. So I think actually pretty high probability for that occurring, and I think the sooner we engage, handling this because we have a consultant, the better.
And since I have the microphone, I just want to remind you all that if we are dedicating our own staff to doing this modeling instead of hiring a consultant, that we do have a severe staff shortage in the engineering department right now. And one of the positions that I requested that was deferred until later is a staff engineer that would be the level of person that we would be needing to do the hydraulic modeling. So Andrew could do it, but he's better put to use doing project management. So anyway, that just put that out there that this additional offer is probably not something that we could just absorb into our current workload based on all of the things going on. But I do agree that it's a really promising way for us to contribute without setting a precedent for the future.
So timing-wise, we're looking at like 8 months of kind of analysis?
Yeah, that's a good question.
We haven't developed that, but I would guess we're probably 9 to 12 months to get this basically done.
We'll get them started as quickly as we can in February, but then, we're going to be developing the work plan, coming back to you before we move into the main effort, which will go through the summer, and then we've got to do all their analysis. And so, we're easily back here in a year, presenting the results of this phase. Could be even longer.
I think your comment about kind of the absorption of this workload and staff time, if that doesn't work or does put us in a detriment, then they have to get a consultant. I mean, it is what it is. Like, again, the question has to exist in all things. Like, it can't put the system in any way in jeopardy, and it can't cause us cost to correct. I'll leave the keys alone, but to correct their deficiencies in their system.
Yeah. And so our intent was, as we work with Kennedy James to develop the task order scope, we'll keep that modeling in there as an alternative task that we can basically authorize, if we just, even if the chief doesn't feel comfortable with us doing the modeling for some reason, then, we'll have an idea of what the costs are expected to be for the consultant to go forward. So, we'll be able to pivot at any point.
And then maybe at the next, doesn't have to be here, but maybe at the next ops meeting, we can talk kind of bigger picture schedule in terms of what this looks like. After this analysis is done, then what schedule there, what's the key schedule, like what's the timing of us making a decision whether or not to take this on.
Well, I think one of the really interesting elements of this is that their current interim general manager is only planning to be with them in that capacity through the end of March. And so there will be another change in leadership on their side. We don't know what that looks like yet, and how that might impact kind of the timeline.
I'll get with Keith, I'll get with Mark and look at what we might want to schedule that next 3x3 as well. I'll get the children on our side of the 3x3.
All right, any other questions? Thanks for your time.
Thank you. You want to take action?
Well, what happened? Going for the refrigerator. Straight into the refrigerator. Yeah.
So all's well. All right,
Okay, John, General Manager report.
All right, thank you. I'll start off with a staffing update. First will be admin assistant clerk of the board. I'm happy to announce that Shannon Chandler will be joining us in December 30th. So you might know Shannon. She's been at the school district for quite a while. She's the assistant to the superintendent, the public information officer for almost 10 years. So it's great to have tremendous pickup for us.
Shannon, you know me frequently.
She's very involved in the school district newsletter. Is that something that maybe she can help Shelley kind of, with her day-to-day stuff, maybe? Possibly?
I think that's very possible.
After Melanie's done.
There's a queue outside your door already.
Yeah, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, she brings in really high skill set.
Moving on, customer service inspector, we interviewed 5 on Tuesday, including 3 of our own internal candidates, and one of our own was selected, Barrett Burkhardt. I went with Barrett. He's been with us for a while, first as a seasonal, starting back in 2010, and then he interviewed and hired on full-time in 2016. And then in 2020, he became our meter service inspector. So congratulations to Barrett. Actually, I've known Barrett for quite a while. It's been about 17 years ago. His little brother and my son Andrew played Top Warner football together, and Barrett is helping coach us. So anyway, small town. So looking forward to that. He's a great guy. And then we have 2 postings that just closed, one for electrical tech and one for heavy maintenance tech. And looks like a really strong group again. A lot of, the numbers are down a little bit, but it looks like the quality is really strong. So our recruitment has been really good lately. And we have 3 open postings, water resources manager, senior associate engineer, and grant specialist. So the grant specialist, this has been actually vacant for over a year. Raina was in that position last year, and then Lynn was getting to retire at that time. We decided to replace Lynn first with Yesenia and give her some time to the district, and now we're ready to go out for her assistant. So I think we're all looking forward to that. And that's full-time. Yeah. So focus some grants. Sure big. So that's the latest on staffing. Next, biosolids, I talked about this at the last meeting, that our biosolids are 100% recycled, and they're composted down at Bentley in Nevada, and that property is up for sale. I think it's 15,000 acres, which includes our composting facility. So our contract expires there in April of 2024, along with many other area agencies we found out. So since our last meeting, we've done some research. So the district, Tahoe Truckee, ISGID, Douglas County Brownhill, Minden, Gardnerville, and Ranchos all take their biosolids to this Bentley facility, along with South Tahoe Refuse and other Nevada agencies we're not completely aware of. But that's a lot right there. That's all over the district and a lot of, the East Slope in our region. While using this composting facility, all of our contracts are kind of coming due at about the same time. This facility is up for sale, so we're just pulling this group together. We're working with Minden, Gardnerville, and contacting all those agencies and see what the interest is if they may be developing a joint facility. And this is Tahoe area, Tahoe region, by state. We think there could really be some state and federal funding available for such a facility. So we're just kicking this off. We're planning this first meeting in January. And I might also mention a couple of those agencies, well, Douglas County and Minden, Gardnerville takes their guys with there as well. So as we do our strategic plan, that's a piece of our strategic plans is to look at taking our effluent, into Nevada. So So we'll keep you updated. So moving on to, let's talk about board goals. 2022 goals, we're nearing the end of the year, and so I'm working with my staff to go through those 89 goals over 12 strategic categories, and getting ready for the end of year assessment. I'm planning to bring that to the board on January 5th. And so these goals, there is a lot of goals. I think it's fairly unique for an agency to do this in this manner. But I think it's been working really well, and I'll be asking the board for their thoughts on that as well. But, it's 89 goals. I'm going to go back and work with our managers to break it down, identify a lead for each one of those goals, and then I meet with a manager at least once a month and go through the, 4 or 5 or 6 goals that they're assigned as lead on, and just to keep the ball rolling, see how we're progressing. We need more resources, we need to modify the goal, and then about mid-year, I bring the goals to the board and kind of do a mid-year update, and sometimes we modify goals, we add goals, or we push some goals up to another year. So I really found this to be an effective way to set, communicate, and really achieve a strong set of specific goals all across the district in a timely manner. So for the board, I think, gives you a better understanding of all the different projects and programs that we have going on, and I think gives you an opportunity to find a way to weave your ideas and goals into our overall effort. So for me, I work with managers, and we make certain and measurable progress in the right areas at the right time. I think for the managers, they can go back and work with their staff and work with other managers and coordinate and make these, achieve these goals over time. And then I post these goals in goals update on our mainline, which is our internal portal, online portal. So all staff can look at the goals and the progress and see how their work fits in to throughout the entire district, and see where they can contribute either in their department or across multiple departments. So I think it's good for that. We can also look back, hopefully this time of year, at a very strong set of aggressive goals, and really show a lot of achievement and celebrate that. So,
Yes, sir. I think I heard Nick say he was not going to be here on the 5th. Could we push that out 2 weeks? Whatever.
we can. I mean, this is
why fill your shoes. Yeah, I'll be back. I get back on the 7th.
So that's like the 19th. Are the rest of the board members going to be here?
Sure, yeah, that totally works. And then, as I look for board comment, this is what we did for 2022. We did something similar in 2021. Prior to that, there just weren't a lot of specific goals to achieve district-wide. So, as we head into 2023, I just want to get the board's input on what they think about this type of goal setting and reporting activity, if they'd like to see something similar or different in 2023.
That's all I'm going to say at the meeting. I'm looking forward to a battery as I was sitting at my house without, over the day I was thinking of you, Julie. I'm over. Yeah, I was like, this is what we need as a district, and with a new grants person on Tahoe, we'll take this in every meeting.
I just quickly wanted to say, I appreciate the work on the goals and laying out 83 or 89. A lot of strategic plans for a number of organizations. I think it's very important, to have expectations set, not only between the board and the district manager, but also with staff and how staff connects. So I appreciate your thoughtfulness of how staff connects to the district's goals. I think that's super important for people to see themselves in that. Yeah. It works well. So I think what I'm hearing is let's generate something similar for 2023. I'll wrap up the 22, report to the board. I guess we'll say on the 19th. Yeah. 19th. And then I'll push something out to the board, in January, leading up to that point.
As you can see, kind of, I'm going to be working with my staff to look at the 2023 goals. And every year this is, I think gets better and it evolves and there's more interaction with our staff and our managers to develop a really strong goal set that has, impact the district and community and our systems. So,
I'm just looking to add to that. Shane has brought this up a few different times. I can't remember in front of the full board context, but the idea of kind of looking at the mission statement again and some of these other items as we get into goal setting, or refresh and maybe speak to things that kind of are priorities and directions of the goal of the district that weren't kind of included historically. And so I don't know kind of where this melds into that, but with the election just being over and this board being set now a couple of years, it might be the time to kind of begin that process.
I think back in August, when I brought back that mid-year assessment, we talked about that process, and the direction from the board at that time was to wait till we had the new board in place and get started on that process in the new year. So I think what I'm hearing is I'll probably put that on next year's goals and kind of look at our vision, mission, and strategic goals, statements, and give that a fresh look. Sounds good, thank you.
Okay.
And that's our report for today.
Okay, so we do have closed session today. Anybody want to take a little break?
Sure.
Report, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, coming out of closed session into open session with nothing to report, and this meeting is adjourned.